All right, everybody, back with another one. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of different things. It's all going to tie into one main topic. We're going to take a look at a clip from Dave Smith on the Joe Rogan podcast today. I think that actually aired live today. I could be mistaken about that, but I think came out either today or yesterday, so fairly new. Um, we're going to take a look at Elon Musk and his DOGE team speaking about something that we're going to discuss today on a Fox News interview. And we're going to dive a little bit into that. And then we're going to take a look at the report from Iron Mountain. So, this is going to be the main topic of today, but we're going to get into what that entails, how it ties back into um, what Doge is working on right now, and the overall, uh, agenda of what I was discussing in my previous video about the downturn of the American culture and economy, and our freedoms um, since the assassination of JFK. So we're going to it's going to be kind of a continuation from the JFK discussion where I made the point that, America has kind of gone downhill since JFK's assassination. And that's why there's so much interest around this topic. And there's so many people that just were waiting and waiting for the files to be released. Um, that it almost became like a religion to certain people. And a lot of that has to do with, because you have to think about the context, right? Other presidents have been assassinated, and the most notable would be Abraham Lincoln. But that has not been as interesting of a topic as JFK. No one's really calling for the government's investigation or secret files around the Abraham Lincoln assassination to be released because everybody kind of got the idea that, we were at war at that point. It was a civil war, the North versus the South, allegedly. That was the kind of the makeup of it. It was really two different types of Americans. One wanted the country to go one way, another wanted it to go the other way. So they just happened to kind of divide themselves up in the North and the South. But it was really more of like an ideology. Which way is America going to go ideologically? And elements of the good were left after that war, were abandoned. And elements of the bad were actually resolved because of that war. So it actually had both positive and negative effects. Um, Nothing is really just one way or the other. You typically do have a little bit of a balance there. Like even some of the stuff that Trump's doing right now while he's in office, it's good stuff, but it could have negative repercussions later on in the future if the wrong people um, decide to, follow in his footsteps and do some of the same things. But there's not a lot of people looking into getting documents released from Lincoln's assassination because we just kind of assume that, yeah, there was, weird conspiratorial things going on, but it was pretty understandable. We were at war, and one side wanted to win against the other side, except both sides wanted to win, but only one could win. So it's obvious that, somebody who wasn't happy about the outcome decided to take him out and probably thought that that was going to be a positive for the other team's chances of winning not only the war, but the culture and everything else that would go along with it. Um, but the reason that the JFK assassination is of such an interest to people is because, number one, there are people that were alive during that time that witnessed it. Lincoln was so far back, no one today is alive. So it's kind of like so far out of reach for us that we really don't have much of an interest about it other than hearing the historical context of it and how it affected America in the long run. But Kennedy, people are actually alive today that were around during that time. And some people might even still be alive that were there and witnessed him getting shot. So it's definitely been a sore spot for Americans because it was almost like, it doesn't matter who it is. If somebody could get to our president and do it in front of the people, that was like an attack on America's strength and America's ability to consider themselves the world's superpower. Um, and what would be even worse if it was from people on the inside, if it was from people in our own country, traitors to this nation. So there's a lot of, people who are upset about that just for that, fact alone. But I think the other thing that built it, built the demand and the interest in it for so long over so many decades, especially with people who weren't even alive during that time. You have more people today probably who weren't even born yet that are obsessed and so um, you know uh, hoping that the government would actually come clean and admit this, then maybe people who were alive then, who maybe kind of put it to rest, just accepted what happened as the official story is what happened. And I think it's because America had gone downhill since then. And I made this case in previous videos. America had gone downhill since then and had continued to go downhill decade after decade since the Kennedy assassination. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of searching for answers, trying to figure out why. What happened during that time where it all hinged on Kennedy getting assassinated and then everything going downhill from there. What was it? So I think it's really more people are looking for answers as to what happened with America that we ended up, turning a chapter, a page into the next chapter of the American story. And why did everything go downhill when it seemed like during that time everything was so great? Like I mentioned in previous videos, the 30s was a depression era coming out of the 1929 stock market crash, and it was a difficult time for America. But the 40s, with the World War II and how that stimulated the economy and some other things as well, um, you know, post-industrial revolution, a 10-year plus period of coming out of the depression. So, all of that really helped America uh, thrive and come back even stronger and better than before. So the 40s and the 50s was really an unbelievable era in American history in terms of, wealth and prosperity, especially for the average American. Um, I think if you compare it to financially today, Americans in the 40s and 50s were probably the richest, most prosperous people that ever lived in American history, including up until today. Yes, there are more millionaires today. There's more people who are, billionaires. Billionaires didn't exist back then. But when you actually compare the valuation of the dollar and inflation and many other factors, a lot more people who were in the middle class, who are the backbone of any economy, were more financially stable back then than they are today. So a case can be made that the 40s and the 50s were the two best decades in American history, not just because of morale and because of just overall culture and sentiment of the country, patriotism and everything, but also financially. But everything kind of went downhill after the Kennedy assassination, like I said. So I think a lot of people are just kind of looking for answers as to why everything seemed to fall apart from that point. And I think I pinpointed um, partially something that um, you may not have seen in the past. People have talked about this. It's not a new thing. Um, but it definitely is something that I think played a big role in that whole era and the Kennedy assassination as well. One of the factors of part of the reason why they probably did decide to go through with it, not the only reason, there was many factors, but one of the reasons why was probably because of this, and it ties into the world government, where the powerful elites have wanted for a long time to create a world government where they could, instead of, because back in history, countries were always doing this. They were always trying to grow and conquer more land and other civilizations and make them merge with theirs. And, one king would be at the top and he would be the king of everybody. And it was just this, basically the way that Satan rules, right? Satan rules the earth as though he's the king on the top. He's got his little demon minions who do his dirty work for him. And then beneath all of them is all of us, man, and we're supposed to be their slaves. So it's a similar concept instead of in the spiritual realm in reality, where there always is someone who wants to be a king amongst people. They want to be, people. That's why power is such a um, it's such a difficult thing to have and not abuse. And many people struggle with this. The more attention they get, the more fame, the more fortune, the more power. It's very hard for them to, not abuse that power or become a tyrant, or become, self-righteous, thinking that they're the greatest, or even that they are a god themselves. The old saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's true. There are always people that are trying to become kings and take over the world. So this is not a new idea. It goes back pre-biblical times and basically forever. Um, you could look at ancient Babylon and see how they were the most richest, prosperous, civilization in probably world history, and they had built gigantic gates around their city to keep out other civilizations because they were always trying to break in and rob them of their wealth that they had built. And the Babylonians weren't they didn't have the greatest army, but what they did have was a lot of wealth and intelligence. And so they figured out a way to just keep the enemies out, and that would allow them to continue to thrive. But people have always been trying to conquer each other. It's just, one of the things about life where it's hard for people to not let power get to their head. So the idea of a world government is not a new thing. I know a lot of people are looking at conspiracies online today, and there's people talking about the new world order and world government, and it's not a new idea. It's not something that a secret group of people just invented recently. This is something that they've been trying to do forever, right? Ancient Rome tried to do it. Um, Great Britain at one point was trying to be the world, nation where they would conquer everybody. And then even during World War II, Germany, with Hitler, was trying to conquer the world as well. And now you see it economically with China. They're trying to outcompete everybody financially and then eventually conquer them, from an economic standpoint, where everybody has no choice but to live under China's rule because they rely on them economically. So there's always going to be nations that try to control the world. America was the first nation that never wanted to do that in its original founding and even its pre-founding. It was always part of the American way to be a nation that was free, where people could, you know, live by their beliefs and, carry out God's will for them, but a nation that was run by the people. And one of the most important things was that the people who founded this country never wanted us to have foreign affairs. They never wanted us to get involved with other countries' problems. They wanted us to continue to build and grow as a nation, to be able to, work hand in hand with other countries with trade or other things. And they wanted us to have the strongest army so that we could protect ourselves and not end up like Babylon. But they didn't want us to interfere with other nations like we've been doing for the last several decades, going out nation building and doing all these things that we shouldn't be involved in, because they knew that America should focus its attention on, prosperity within, defense within, from the outside enemy, and not get involved with all these other things that are none of our business. Um, and that is exactly what caused America to become the world superpower. We became the strongest by not getting involved in anything and instead just building our military, becoming more technologically advanced, and many other things that go with that. So basically, what I'm saying is war is antithetical to the American way of life. The only time it makes sense for Americans to go to war is other countries are trying to conquer us. Then we have no choice but to defend ourselves. So America is a defense-only country. We're not supposed to go out there and do these things, get involved in foreign affairs. However, there are probably exceptions to every rule. And, maybe during World War II, it made a lot of sense at that time to do it. Otherwise, the threat of Germany would become so strong and so big that maybe they would be able to conquer America. And during that time, we were a lot less, um, you know, militarily strong and known as the world's toughest country. We were not there yet, World War II put us over the edge to where after the, that with the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and all that stuff, we did definitely become known as the toughest country in the world. And, the strongest. That's why we are the world superpower. But, so maybe that was something that we had to go through as a nation in order to become, the top country. But ever since, JFK's assassination, things went downhill. And we did start going out there and no longer just having wars and even really before that with Korea, but we no longer just went out there having wars to defend America or the world from major foreign threats. We went out and nation built. We went out and knocked down one government and install a new government that we want, or that whoever has an agenda to have that person in power or that group in power. And it ended up just being where America now goes and decides what countries are going to exist and who's going to run them, and it's completely wrong. And it's un-American. It's not the American way of life. So we're going to jump into a quick clip of some of what they were talking about the war machine and in America, coming from America, but in the world as well, on the Joe Rogan podcast with Dave Smith. And then we'll jump into a little bit of a clip of Elon Musk and the DOGE team talking about, some of their findings with the Social Security stuff that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today.
What percentage of them are like just against the war and seeing pictures of dead babies and stuff like that? What percentage of them are actually, like harbor resentment toward Jewish people? Like it's kind of hard to measure. But I would just say that like it almost in a very similar way to like what I was talking about with the drone war against Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. It just made them stronger. It's like, hey, if you want to see less Al-Qaeda, maybe stop having the American military kill innocent civilians in their land, because that seems to be fueling them. And at the same time, for the people who are so concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism, you're like, okay, well, it has exploded since Israel's been doing this to Gaza, right? So like maybe the US shouldn't be funding and arming the whole goddamn conflict, because that does seem to like at least give those people a giant talking point to latch onto. Maybe we shouldn't have a system where like our political class is not allowed to criticize a foreign government, and a foreign government that's gotten us into like 7 wars, or at least played a large role in getting us into those wars explicitly. I'm not like alleging some secret conspiracy. Yeah. I'm saying like Benjamin Netanyahu is John McCain.
Right.
Like he's been telling us Iran has a nuke. He's been telling us they're 5 years away from a nuke since I was 7. Literally, he's been saying Iran is 5 years away from a nuke the entire time. And he came over here, he testified before Congress in 2002 that we, as a regional expert, that if we were to overthrow Saddam Hussein, democracy would sweep the region and there'd be all these positive reverberations. And then he goes, and you also got to overthrow the regime in Iran, and you also got to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. And like every single one of these things, not Iran yet, still pushing for that, but we went and overthrew Saddam Hussein. We went and overthrew Muammar Gaddafi. And I don't know what swept the region, but it wasn't democracy.
No, I remember in the early 2000s when I realized there's 2 fighting factions of Islam. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And that Saddam Hussein had actually kept that from boiling over.
Yeah.
Because he was in control.
Yeah. No, I remember learning it too, right around the same time.
You're like, wait a minute.
You're telling me there are shirts and skins over there?
They fight against each other? Like, what are they? Do you know the difference between Sunni and Shia?
I mean, I know that they're different sects of Islam, but like in terms of like the religion itself,
is it like the Catholics versus the Protestants?
Yeah, I think it's something
kind of
something like that. Like it's always the people with the like most minor interpretations of their holy book differences who like go to war the most aggressively.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's like
Catholics
and the Protestants, or like
fucking
you agree
crazy.
on 95% of this religion, but like whatever.
If you didn't know about that conflict, you would never believe it's real. Like Christians going to war with other Christians, like different sects. Like brutal, horrible wars.
Especially when you could like read about Jesus and you'd be like, this doesn't seem to be what he's saying at all, man.
Yeah,
like,
who's at the helm of this fucking battleship?
It's unbelievable to me that and I'm not claiming to be any type of religious expert, and I'm not a Christian, but it is unbelievable to me that anybody could be a Christian and could then like somehow do the mental gymnastics and rationalization to be like, and that's why you got to support every war. That's why we got to fight every single one of these wars. Because, just like that guy Jesus told us, slaughter women and babies. You're like, seems like the opposite of his message from my humble understanding of it.
So the argument of that, if you want to take the argument, would be like, you have to do that to protect everyone here.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
right.
the argument,
Right.
right?
Like we have to go to war with Iran, a country that doesn't have nuclear weapons or an air force capable of delivering them here.
And it's so convenient that they're evil. So convenient.
Okay, so that was a clip of them talking about basically the war, military industrial complex, how Eisenhower put it in the 50s. And there's a reason why the governments are always going to war, even if, it used to be back in the day where if somebody went to war, like when America went into the American Revolutionary War with Great Britain, the whole country was pretty much on board. There were a few people who didn't want to because those were holdovers from the previous generations that believed in um, you know uh, the British still having the rights to America because they were partly one of the countries that helped get the colonists to the American landmass. If you again go back to my Christopher Columbus episode from Thanksgiving of last year, it's a great episode. Talks all about that, uh, journey that they took and how the pioneers came to America and they were funded by Spain and Great Britain, and they, with the intention of settling civilizations there to populate it, almost exactly like what Elon Musk is talking about doing with Mars, which is funny because that might be a history repeating itself moment where when they do start sending people to Mars, um, will it look a lot like the pioneers coming to America and, beginning the civilization that would become, the American people, and then distancing themselves from Great Britain, declaring that they were going to be self-governed and that they didn't want another country ruling them? I wonder if the Mars situation is going to go the same way. Now, who knows? That might take 50 more years and we might be much older or dead by then. But, you know, I wonder if that does actually happen. Will the people that America sends to Mars through, Elon Musk's SpaceX missions, will they go there, begin reporting back to America, and then after, 10 or 20 years, will they just declare that they're their own people and they have their own country and now they took over Mars and they're not, they're distancing themselves from us? But that's a little side note. I find that funny. It'd be funny if history repeated itself and it's the exact same thing as the pioneers who founded America, just now on another planet. But we'll see how that pans out in the future. But basically what they're talking about is the, military industrial complex and how there seems to be a need for always having wars, even if the wars are not necessary and not something that majority of the population is in agreement with. Um, that's the abuse of power that the government is doing. Like I said back in the day with the American Revolutionary War, you had the majority of the country on board because they wanted freedom. They wanted to be their own nation. And in the Civil War, you had the majority of the country on board on both sides because they wanted to have things go their way, their vision for the future of what America would look like. Even World War I and II, a good portion of America was in agreement with it and signed up for those wars. Probably had the highest enrollments in American history for World War II, because not only was it something that they agreed with, they wanted to stamp out, communism and the evil regimes of, Hitler and Germany at that time. Um, it was like a pride thing. It was like a thing of, it means something to be a man and go to war to defend your country and your family. But over the last 60 years, that's not the case. You had the big turning point. Korea was a smaller war that was kind of eclipsed by World War II. But with the Vietnam War, that was a big war and that was a disaster. But a lot of what the disaster was that the people were drafted into it and forced to go. They did not agree with it. The people, that's part of the reason why we lost that war. They'll say it was because of the jungle and how the Americans were not, prepared to fight in those conditions. And yes, that's true too. But you have to remember during the time of the American Revolutionary War, the America was completely raw, like underdeveloped. to where it is today. And the Americans had to fight all over the country, battling the British. And there were, tough conditions that they had to go through too, but they succeeded, because they had their heart in it. That was the difference with Vietnam. Vietnam, a majority of the people did not have their heart in it. There were so many people, draft dodging. They would go to Canada or other countries to not have to fight in the war. There were people who just were not into it. Yeah, there's definitely a bunch that were because they like war or they, were holdovers from the older generations that felt that pride that, maybe their father fought in World War II and they wanted to like, impress or have their dad be proud of them. So they fought, signed up for Vietnam. But that's part of the reason why we lost that war was because the Americans' heart was not in it. And there was really no gain for us. Even if we won the war, what would that possibly do for America? Vietnam had no impact on America in our country. That war was fought over ridiculous stuff and it really was meaningless. But then you get into, the other wars that come after that. Most people don't even know what those wars are. You had the Gulf War, the War on Terror in the early 2000s, a couple other little wars and battles in between. And some of them aren't even called wars because they were so small and unknown. But a lot of these wars were rackets, and most of America by at least the early 2000s with the war in Iraq definitely did not have their heart in it and did not want anything to do with that war. There were definitely a good portion that did because they were kind of, fooled by the whole 9/11 situation, and they felt that America was being attacked by a foreign enemy, and they wanted to go, retaliate for what had happened to the World Trade Center buildings in New York and all the people that died with that. It turned out, many years later that that war was, basically propaganda for, oil and other things that really, was not anything that America should have got involved in. And still to this day, there are people, again, like the JFK files, that are calling for the true investigation into 9/11 to be released and all the information around that, what the government knew about the truth of that, who did it, and all that stuff. Was America involved? Was it an inside job? So there's a lot of people that are really, interested in these things and want to know. They want answers from the government because they've seen that America has gone downhill for the last 60 years. And the reason is because exactly what Dave Smith and Joe Rogan were talking about. There is uh, a business in war, but it's not like what most people think, where it's just about money. It's not. It's about power and control. War is how they control the nation. They control the people. You keep them, preoccupied and focused on the war and having to constantly have a battle, to defend your nation, your family, or your honor. And it allows the government to control you. We should be spending our time like the founding fathers and the people of that era, believed in. What they really put their heart and soul into America to create was a nation where people can focus their attention on, prospering, focus their attention on their beliefs and their, relationship with God and living a Christian lifestyle, and focus on their families, focus on, all these wonderful things, community and, so many other things that this nation has to offer over the last 60 years since, JFK was assassinated. They had so many people focused on a lot of these nonsense wars that they kept roping Americans into. And that's part of what we're going to look at today. But first, I want to show you this clip of Elon Musk because that kind of ties into it. Thinking that, yeah, I'll show you the clip now because I just want you to hear about what they have to say, and then we're going to look into what we're going to look into.
DOGE handle on X. And you'll see just outrageous things, one outrageous thing after another.
Joe Gabbia, besides Elon, you're one of several billionaires here, co-founder of Airbnb, and you wanted to help out.
I bumped into Anthony and Elon probably back in February, and they told me something about a mine that was dealt with retirement, and they said they needed somebody to help out to fix retirement in the government. I love the challenge, so I jumped on board, and it turns out there is actually a mine in Pennsylvania that houses every paper document for the retirement process in the government. Now, picture this. This giant cave has 22,000 filing cabinets stacked 10 high to house 400 million pieces of paper. It's a process that started in the 1950s and largely hasn't changed in the last 70 years. And so as he dug into it, we found retirement cases that had so much paper, they had to fit it on a shipping pallet. So the process takes many months, and we're going to make it just many days.
Will it be digitized or how?
Absolutely. So this will be an online digital process that will take just a few days at most. And I really think, it's an injustice to civil servants who are subjected to these processes that are older than the age of half the people watching your show tonight. So we really believe that the government can have an Apple Store-like experience, beautifully designed, great user experience, modern systems.
Because right now it's by hand.
Yes, the retirement process is all by paper, literally with people carrying paper in manila envelopes into this gigantic mine.
So they can't retire more than a certain number every month.
Yes.
About 8,000 a month.
That's how the reason we discovered it was we were saying, like, well, let's encourage voluntary retirement. As to, well, the most they could do is 8,000 a month, and even under normal circumstances, it can take 6 to 9 months just to have your retirement paperwork processed, and they often get the calculations wrong. So we're like, well, why would it take so long to retire? And they're like, well, because of the mine. And we're like, what do you mean a mine? What's a mine got to do with retiring? And that's where we discovered that all the retirement stuff is still done by paper in a process that looks identical to what occurred in the 1950s. Like, we took a snapshot of the mine when it first started in the 50s to today, it looks the same.
It's amazing. So how long do you think it'll take to turn over?
We're working as fast as we can. Probably next couple of months we'll have this overhauled. And I really think, again, like, why are we subjecting our federal workers to processes that they actually have to go through a training just to retire from the government? There's a whole training program that people have to go through in order to retire. I think we can do better for them.
Aram Moganasi, DOGE engine.
So there you go. I wanted you to see that clip because it was important to what we're going to talk about now. Elon Musk and the DOGE team, who, by the way, that person speaking was the co-founder of Airbnb. So these are really credible, reputable people who have done, big things in America, not just, random people who have accounting backgrounds. They discovered while they were auditing the Social Security Administration that in order for them to retire, they would have to go and get the paper files from the vault, basically, and process them by hand. And that's how the government does it with all of the retirement and pensions and everything for the federal government employees across the board. And you heard what he said. There's like hundreds of millions of files in there that people have to go through. And the government is already inefficient because of, the way that they train their employees and the way that people, it's everybody knows that pretty much every department of government, it takes forever for anything to get done. But now you're doing it by paper. So you can kind of understand why things take so long with the government. And this is partially the reason why. But what was interesting is he said that this was a process that started in the 1950s, and it's by a company called Iron Mountain. Iron Mountain, we're going to take a look at now, is Iron Mountain is a company that basically does exactly this. They store, documents for companies, businesses, and obviously governments, in the United States government, in these locations that are super secure, that are able to preserve the documents for long periods of time. Because especially with paper documents, if they're not stored properly, over time they can actually, decompose, or the ink could come off, and it could be, hard to understand what's on that document anymore, making it where, it's no longer legible, and whatever you're trying to do with it, you can't do. You can't get the right information or data off the document. So, his team was going in there to digitize everything and make it available in the modern day, online, like in some sort of digital form with either file sharing, or even put it on like a, internet-based program for people to quickly access the documents. Obviously, there's something to preserving important documents in non-digital ways in order to make sure that they are able to stand the test of time, because we don't know what, things are going to happen with digital stuff in the future. Just think about how over the course of your life, you probably have had hard drives and thumb drives and USB drives, um, SD cards and, different things where you've saved files or pictures from the course of your life, and you might not be able to find them anymore. Or maybe something happened to them digitally where the information got wiped and you can't access it anymore. Now imagine if that happened with the entire government, on a nationwide, in a nationwide situation with a data leak or some sort of, hacking or something. So there's definitely something to protecting the files in their hard copy form, but you do also need to have them digitized so that it's able to be, handled in the modern day, and then have that as a backup as a reserve. But if you look here, Iron Mountain has been, for more than 70 years. Well, 70 years ago was essentially the 1950s, more than 70 years ago. Publicly traded company, strategic partner for care of your information and assets, global leader in storage of information management services, trusted by all these different organizations, 500, Fortune 1000 companies, stuff like that. So essentially, this is who they are and what they do. I want you to take a look at this now because we're going to get into this in a little bit. But this is so the location that Elon Musk was talking about is in Pennsylvania. That's where they're currently holding the records. Inside of a mountain. They call it a mine, but it's actually a giant storage facility that's carved out of a giant mountain. And the only way to get into it is to access the front, through the front entrance where there's a huge gate and it's guarded 24/7. Basically just have hired security to, federal government security to guard these documents inside of a giant mountain. And they're in mountain because probably many different reasons. It'd be hard to, uh, set something on fire in a mountain, or if there's a natural disaster, you don't have to worry about something happening. It's in a mountain. Other countries can't, spy through the mountain, with technology and see what's on those documents. It's clearly done for a reason, but this is one of their locations. The one that Elon Musk was talking about is in Pennsylvania, but this one is right here in a little town called Germantown. And if you notice, it's right here by Hudson, New York. So this is one of their locations right by Hudson, New York, in a mine in that area. And this is also where they do some of that stuff. Now, what we're going to jump into today is something called the Report from Iron Mountain. Now, there's controversy behind this, but there is, some records that show that this was something that was actually a legitimate thing, and it makes perfect sense. But I'll back it up with actual public law. But we're going to look at a document called the Report from Iron Mountain, which was essentially a study put together by the United States government or members of, where they had a team of experts in all different fields basically get together at Iron Mountain location in New York near Hudson and essentially spend several, I think it was months or years, brainstorming different scenarios and outcomes for the government to be able to disarm the people and what that would look like. That was essentially the entire concept of it. So this is another big part that ties into the whole JFK assassination, post JFK, because pre JFK, they were looking at the country going one way, and they were already eroding our natural rights that are in the Constitution. They changed our money with the Federal Reserve in 1913 and many other things that they did to erode this nation and its freedoms, or the people's freedoms in this nation, and give the government more power, leading it down the road to tyranny. But one of the biggest things that has always kept them from being able to actually conquer its people is the people's ability to have firearms, have arms, right? That's why the Second Amendment is so important, because the people have the right to bear arms, and it's our last defense, our last protection against not only an outside force, an outside invader, but also a tyrannical government from within. That's why guns are so important. It's not just guns, it's the ability to protect yourself in any capacity. If the government is able to take that away from its people, the people are no longer free, for sure. And you can actually look at this throughout history and the modern day. Other countries, in your lifetime have given up their guns to the government and have had most, if not all, of their rights stripped away from them. So we're going to take a look at that report now. It's a very long report, but we're going to look at some key parts of it, and then I'm going to show you a public law that backs that up, that shows the credibility of it. So let's get into that report now. So this is the actual document, report from Iron Mountain on the possibility and desirability of peace. Now that's another key thing that the government does. They do this with a lot of bills that they pass. They'll name the bill the opposite of what it actually is, right? Like the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is one of the most worst bills that have ever been put in place, acts or whatever, where the government actually stripped the American people of more of their rights than ever before. So it was the most unpatriotic thing ever, but they call it the Patriot Act. And they do this a lot in government where they intentionally name, bills, opposite of what it is on purpose to trick the people into thinking, because a lot of times that's what people do. They go to a website, read an article. They don't read the article. They just read the title. And in their mind, they, just read the title and they made up their mind about that situation, regardless of having never read the article itself. So this is what they were calling it, because the idea was, if we can get the guns from the people, we will have peace, and we're going to sell them on peace by if we can take your guns, there'll be no more wars, and therefore there'll be peace. But what, the people who don't understand how this works is, guns have not always existed, right? But people have been killing each other since the beginning of time. War has always existed. So there's no way to eradicate war by taking away weapons. It does not work. People will still kill each other with anything. I think Cain killed Abel with a rock. Goliath, David killed Goliath with a slingshot and a rock. People will always find a way to murder each other if they so choose to, especially nowadays, like with, modern mixed martial art techniques and stuff. You could kill somebody with your bare hands, and the average person could actually do it now. So it's not like we need weapons to kill each other, but taking weapons away will not solve the problem of war. Governments are the ones that start wars. The people don't start wars. No American is getting on a boat and sailing to China and storming their country and fighting them in hand-to-hand combat. A government sets up the war, gets the people, recruits them, and then ships them off to go fight that war on the politicians' behalf. Taking away the guns will not solve that problem. The problem gets solved when the people, stand up against the government and say, no, we're not fighting in those wars. We don't want war. We want peace, and we're going to keep our guns and have peace anyway. So this whole thing about, peace is the lie. It's the cover. It's the front. It's the way to sell people. And if you notice over the last 20 years, you've had so many more people, especially young people in college and stuff, being brainwashed into believing that gun control is a good idea. And we've kind of gone down that slope significantly anyway with, firearm licenses and, national databases that you have to register your gun and this and that. It's not like we're completely free, but at the same time, we still have the weapons to be able to defend ourselves. So there's at least that fail safe. But this is the report here. It's an interesting report. If you ever get the chance to read it, you could probably just search the name of the report and PDF on online, and you should be able to find the report for yourself to read it. But this is a legitimate study that they did where they really analyzed every situation and how it could turn out for the government that's trying to control the people if they disarm the people, and what would that look like. And so we'll just go into a little bit of it right now just to get an idea. But I want to start with the introduction. So this is kind of the writer who wrote this. He wrote the sort of like an intro explaining the situation and how the people got to this place. Early in August of 1963, he responded to a call from Washington to serve on a commission of the highest importance. Its objective was to determine accurately and realistically the nature of the problems that would confront the United States if and when a condition of permanent peace, in quotes, should arrive and to draft a program for dealing with this contingency. The unique procedures that were to govern the commission's work were expected to extend its scope far beyond that of any previous examination of these problems. So, allegedly they had done studies on this beforehand, but this was supposed to be like a really conclusive one to figure out how to go from here. So it was a special study group, an interagency committee, and if you look, this was, allegedly this event happened at Iron Mountain in New York, in Hudson, New York, and it was actually published. This was published in New York. Now we'll take a look at a few things here. This was published in 1967. So this goes back to the Kennedy era, right? The meeting place itself, Iron Mountain, location near the town of Hudson. So this was, again, like I said, this was done in Iron Mountain near Hudson, New York. And this was even published in New York. And we went on Iron Mountain's website, and they have a location that's right outside of Hudson, New York. So it makes sense that that's probably the location that this took place at. But this is the gist of what they say. Behind their qualified academic language runs this general argument: war fills certain functions essential to the stability of our society. Until other ways of filling them are developed, the war system must be maintained and improved in effectiveness. So they're admitting that there is a system, a war system in place, and that the government needs to not only maintain it, but improve upon it. So again, when the Special Study Group was established in August 1963, its members were instructed to govern their deliberations in accordance with the principal criteria. Briefly stated, they were these: military-style objectivity, avoidance of preconceived value assumptions, inclusion of all relevant areas of theory and data. So just take a look at that. August 1963, what was going on then? This study, this report was being put into place. In November of 1963, JFK was assassinated. Just a few months later, they were working on this. Well, so now let's figure out who actually put this report together. Who reached out to these people to have them do this study. The debate took place at the group's last full meeting before the report was written, late March 1966. So they were working on this in 1963, and this came to a conclusion in 1966 before it was published in 1967. So who put the meeting together? If you take a look at this right here, it explains it. Those who argued the case for keeping the report secret were admittedly motivated by fear of the explosive political effects that could be expected from publicity. For evidence, they were pointed to the suppression of the far less controversial report of Senator Hubert Humphrey's subcommittee on disarmament in 1962. So the president at the time had put this together. Who was Herbert Humphrey? Herbert Humphrey was LBJ Lyndon B. Johnson's vice president, and there's a lot of controversy around Johnson being involved in the Kennedy assassination. Now, if you look at this, Humphrey had a subcommittee on disarmament in 1962. We're going to jump into an actual public law that goes with this. So if you take a look right here, Herbert Humphrey, he had a subcommittee on disarmament in 62 to discuss, this idea of disarming the American people. In 1961, this act that became public law was enacted, and it is the establishment of the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, and it was called the Arms Control and Disarmament Act. So basically, the government put together a law to disarm the people, a plan to disarm the people, and then after the fact had a committee on this, and shortly after that, this group was put together to do extensive research and brainstorming on what that would look like in the real world and how they would be able to implement that on the American people without having a revolution against them, and instead sell it to the people as world peace. What have we heard for the last several decades? World peace, world peace, world peace. You've even had this brainwashed into the culture through Hollywood. I think one of the most popular references to this is when some sort of beauty model wins a pageant, and they say, ask her, what would she want most in the world, and they always say world peace. That's not by accident. That's by design. They're trying to, brainwash the culture into accepting that idea of world peace. That way, when they tie it in with disarmament, it sounds more attractive and more digestible to the American people. But let's get back into the report. How was the group formed? The general idea for this kind of study dates back to at least 1961. It started with some of the new people who came in with the Kennedy administration, mostly, I think, with McNamara, Bundy, and Rusk. They were impatient about many things. One of them was that no really serious work had been done about planning for peace, a long-range plan that is with long-range planning. So these are people who came in with the Kennedy administration that were basically moles in his government, and they were aggressively pushing to get this study done. For what reason? And sure enough, when the study was concluded in 1963, it was just shortly before JFK was assassinated. So it's likely that either he found out about this and was, blocking it or trying to put a stop to it, or just, not allowing it to, maybe continue, or maybe had some opposition to it. Or whoever, was involved in the assassination felt that if him being the president continued, they would not be able to implement some of these scenarios that were, the people who put this report together recommended. They would not be able to implement them if he was in their way. And the way that things were going, a lot of people liked Kennedy, so it was likely that they would have voted him in again for a second term. Which he would have been in there until the late 60s, going into the 70s, and that could have led to morale boost, people liking, Kennedy and his policies, and not to mention some of the stuff that he was doing was really rivaling the, elitists and the people who had, basically the beginning of the swamp in America. Um, so it might have created a precedent that called for other presidents to, follow in his footsteps rather than go on the path that they wanted to go on. So it's likely that this report and then the outcome of this report is part of the reason why he was assassinated, because he might have stood in their way. And just like you're seeing today with Donald Trump, a lot of the stuff that he's doing is reversing a lot of what the crooked politicians have done for so long, whether it be, financially fraud that they put together in this country, taking the wealth from the American people and pulling it back to themselves and their interests, or actually, discovering who the criminals are and exposing them so that they could be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Either way, we don't know because it's not concluded yet, but it's obviously part of the reason why there were multiple assassination attempts made on his life. I'm not going to get into all of this, but you can read it on your own time if you'd like. Here is the chapter about disarmament and the economy. It breaks down, basically what that would look like from an economic standpoint. And this is different disarmament scenarios. What would happen if they did do it? What would be the repercussions? How could they sort of, plan against that? And they even call it war games here. The Rand Corporation's in there. There's a lot going on here, a lot of interesting stuff that, like I said, likely ties back into part of the reason why they took out Kennedy. And then you have here war and peace social systems. Now, like I said, we're not going to go into everything here because it's a lot of pages, and it's an in-depth report that really analyzes a lot of different what-if scenarios. So if you have the time to read it on your own, I highly recommend you do. But we're just going to take a look at a couple of them just so you can get an idea as to what the conclusions of the report entailed. Summary and conclusions. So it breaks down here the functions of war from an economic standpoint, political standpoint, and all these different categories. Just for example, economic. War has provided both ancient and modern societies with a dependable system for stabilizing and controlling national economies. No alternate method of control has yet been tested in a complex modern economy that has shown itself remotely comparable in scope of effectiveness. Political. The permanent possibility of war is the foundation for stable government. It supplies the basis for general acceptance of political authority. It has enabled societies to maintain necessary class distinctions, and it has ensured the subordination of the citizens to the state by virtue of the residential war powers inherent in the concept of nationhood. No modern political ruling group has successfully controlled its constituency after failing to sustain the continuing credibility of an external threat of war. So there are other categories here, sociological, ecological, but I want you to understand that is the most important paragraph of their conclusion. It's basically saying that the government needs the constant threat of war to be able to control the people. That's the exact opposite of the system that we have in America. The American government and the people who work for it work for the people. The people are the government. That's where we, the people, means. We're the ones who actually control this nation and how it's going to be ruled. We appoint these people by voting them in to deal with certain things and handle certain, matters on our behalf. But we still hold the power. They're servants of us. That's why they're called public servants. They're not royalty. They're not monarch. They're not dictators. They're public servants. They serve the people. It's no different than hiring anybody to do a job for you. So that paragraph explains everything. The war system is a system that is designed to control the people through the constant threat and fear of some sort of, catastrophic event or some sort of, inherent war that might take place or invasion or attack that might happen on the American people. And I think it kind of goes back to the American Revolution because Great Britain came over to America and stormed our country. We didn't go there and fight them. So maybe there's always something inherently in us that fears that that's going to happen again one day. Maybe sort of ingrained in us, like, ancient trauma passed down from our ancestors. But either way, this is a tactic that governments use to control the people. And what they're doing there is explaining this is a system that is designed to take the people by control and use fear as the motivating force, but also to get the people to submit their power and the control over to the state, which is the government, to control the people. That's the opposite of our constitutional republic, and it's actually evil. That's between that and communism is exactly what has been the erosion of the American system for the last 60, 70 years, and all goes back to JFK's assassination. This all is tied in together. So if you're wondering what happened, like so many people are, don't worry so much about the documents and getting them and finding out Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK in the limo with the candlestick. It's not a clue game. No one really cares that much anymore because it's over with. What you need to understand is the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the people that were in power wanted to take him out because he was getting in the way of their agenda to bring communism into America. And they actually tried to pin that on him later on, which is kind of ironic. They do that. They do this like bait and switch thing. And continue the war system, really the military industrial complex system that Eisenhower was talking about shortly before he left office and, JFK came in. But continue the military war system in this country and use it as a tool to control the people, only to phase it out by disarming the people as the total end result. And that's the last straw in communism conquering America. If they get the guns from the people, and like I said in my previous video, establish that world court that supersedes our courts, it's over for America. Those are the last two things. And if those happen, it doesn't matter how many great economic things Donald Trump does or whoever is in office does, America will officially be fully and completely conquered. And that's it. We will no longer be America. The American dream will have died unless there is a revolution by the people to completely take it back. But if you don't have any weapons, you can't do that. That's the only thing that gave the founders and the generation of people that lived during the American Revolutionary War, the ability to fight back against the greatest superpower of the world at that time, Great Britain, was the fact that they had guns, that had weapons to defend and protect themselves. If the American people don't have that, there will be no revolution, and we will be conquered, and that will be the new way of life for this nation. So, in closing, essentially, this all ties in together. It was, a lot of people look over the course of their life and they're wondering what happened, why did everything go downhill after the JFK assassination, what really took place, and all that stuff. The intricate details, a lot of people like to get lost in the conspiracies of everything, are not that important. The overall big picture is what really matters. And that's what I hope to do with this channel mostly over time, is create the big picture, help you focus on the big picture of things, not get so caught up in the minutiae and the little details of stuff. I know there's a billion and one conspiracies out there, and many of them are true, some of them are not, some of them are intentionally made up to deceive, like a psyop. But um, don't get caught up in all of that. Look at the big picture as to what is happening and why it's happening and how we could change it so that it doesn't continue. Because America is really honestly, literally at its end here. If Donald Trump didn't win this election, it would have been over for America officially, and there would be no coming back. The fact that he won shows God had grace on this nation and was giving us one more chance to make things right. But if we lose our faith in him and don't turn back to him through Christ, and we lose the guns, it's over for America. There's absolutely no coming back. However, we're not there yet. So there's a fighting chance. God has given this nation grace, told us if we turn from our wicked ways and, repent, he will heal our land, and America might have a revival, might have an amazing second chapter. So let's hope that that's actually how things go. But the information is there. You can read it for yourself. You can, look into this a lot more if that's what you choose to do. But it does all sort of tie in together to going back to the JFK assassination and how we got here. Essentially, the big idea is communism has and will continue to take over America until it's stopped by the people. But the people have to turn back to God first. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. There's a lot of people, coming to Christ. I've spoken about this many times in past videos, so I won't reiterate it. But yeah, if you, don't want this nation getting conquered by communism, understand what's happening, speak out against it, stand up for what you believe, and turn back to God. And this nation might look a lot different in 10 or 20 years in a good way. But anyway, we did a nice, deep dive here, long video. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. But that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you do want the link to the PDF, I have it online here. You could just put it in the comment section, and I will either DM you directly or paste it there. But check out. Don't forget to watch the little ad at the end of this video. We don't do ads. We just do all of the stuff that we have going on. So get my children's book, Little Boy Full of Love. It's available. All the information's in the ad at the end of this video. It's my book. I wrote it, published it. So definitely get that, for you or anybody who has young children. It's a great, wholesome family book. We have a apparel shop where a percentage of profits go to charity, an Amazon storefront, because there's a lot of, great things that we like, that we use in our daily lives, that we recommend other people, purchase if you so choose. No pressure there. And just some other things that I'm working on. I did a previous video about Christianity and helpful things that might be able to teach you how to become a better Christian if you already are, or if you're not. Teach you how to sort of get on the road, begin that process in your life. The PDF is available also in the links in the show notes and my bios and stuff as well. But check all that stuff out. And that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. All right, everybody, I just want to take a moment to promote my children's book. This is Little Boy Full of Love. That's me on the back. And this is a little sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. It's a children's book. I actually wrote this for my son. and it's available right now on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, Bookshop.org, and a lot of other online platforms. But more importantly to me, it's actually available in a lot of bookstores throughout the country. You can find out which ones are closest to you on my Instagram page. You know, we highly recommend that you shop local, buy from a local bookstore. So if you are looking to, you know, get a children's book for you or anybody you know, or even with the holidays coming up, it's a great time to, you know, buy a children's book as a gift. You know, definitely get it from a bookstore that's local to you. But if you absolutely can't get it from one of the bookstores that are currently carrying it right now, and we're in about 15 or 16 different states across the country, so it may actually be in your state, and it could even be local to you. But if you can't get it from the physical bookstore, check out our Amazon storefront. The book's available on there right now. And like I said, with the holidays coming up, you may want to do your Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday shopping early, and you can even order it from our Amazon storefront and ship it directly to whoever you're gifting it to. But it's available on those platforms, Amazon storefront and bookstores and other websites that I mentioned. But I want to take a moment here to look at the storefront just to give you an idea of some other stuff that we have available on there. These are products that we highly recommend. They are things that we use in our daily lives, and it's all organized by category. So it's a lot easier to, you know, shop for the holidays and specifically for things that interest you, particular categories. Available right now, many different items on our storefront. If you can see here, 61 items just in women's apparel, fall decor, because right now we're in fall, 26 items, kitchen items, you know, baking specifically, things for around the house, children's toys, even stuff for parties. If you're trying to save money on a party and throw in your own, you know, occasion, you can even buy some cool gadgets here to help you, you know, put on a better party. You know, health and wellness items here, even stuff for Christmas. And there's the book right there. So you can get it from the storefront. You can get it from the bookstores, like I mentioned. But it's available on all these different platforms. It's really easy to find and gift to somebody. Also, I want to show you the apparel shop, and these are some clothing items that we actually produced. So if you're looking to get some cool apparel items, you know, shirts, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, leggings, even accessories, cell phone cases, women's makeup bags, fanny packs, coffee mugs, all different types of stuff, even some, you know, art, all different categories here, apparel, homeware, accessories, drinks, even digital items. It's all on this store, healthybodygoodssoul.com. Anything that pertains to you or somebody that you're looking to get a gift for the holidays. A lot of great designs on here, a lot of cool designs that we actually custom created. Stainless steel water bottles, especially now with the fall and winter. A lot of cool hoodies and long sleeve shirts. This is a really cool one, I think, for women. The original Be Your Soul apparel, that one's actually really popular. People tend to like that. This one's one of my favorites. The free shirt. It's the American flag and it says free and that says not property of the United States government. That one's pretty cool. Got all different types of tank tops, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, tote bags, coffee mugs, even some items for kids, backpacks. So if you're the type that likes to, you know, plan ahead, I would definitely recommend ordering from the Amazon storefront or the apparel shop within the next couple of weeks to get everything in time for the holidays. Use code SAVE15 on the apparel shop to save 15% off everything on the storefront. So order within the next week or two and you'll definitely have everything in time for the holidays. Definitely check out all the links to everything, the Amazon storefront, the book, and the apparel shop in my bio on all my platforms, Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify. But you can also find them in all the show notes for every episode that I post and get all your orders in time for the holidays. All right, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps the channel continue to grow. And put in the comments things that you would like me to talk about and make videos on for the future, and I will definitely do my best to do that. Stay tuned for the next one.